Well, 6 games in and 0 wins between them. Already so many questions surrounding the Demons and the Blues. Melbourne will be asking themselves, do we have the right list? Carlton may be asking themselves, do we have the right coach? But tonight on Footy Classified, we start with breaking news, and that is that 4 big Victorian clubs are chasing one contracted star, and it's not who you might think. Footy Classified starts now. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Footy Classified. Yes, that breaking news shortly about a contracted Victorian-born star playing for an interstate club. But let's start by welcoming our panel, one of the best journalists in the country, Damien Barrett, the 2-time Alf Brown winner. Welcome to you, Damo.
Evening, Sam.
Jimmy Bartell, the Northsmith medalist and Brownlow medalist. Welcome to you, Jim.
Sam.
And the man who is the 12-time leading goal kicker, the superstar from the Essendon Football Club, Matthew Lord. Lordo, great to have you.
Thanks, Sam.
Now, Sam, Port Adelaide's still reeling from a bad loss to Essendon last week, but there are more concerns tonight around its best player and his Victorian links.
Yeah, that's right, Damo. Zak Butters, who is a restricted free agent at the end of 2026, so contracted until then. There are now 4 Victorian clubs who are aware that his head may be turned, not next year during free agency, but at the end of this season. Now, there's a myriad of reasons why they think that the Bacchus Marsh boy may do that. One being the fact that Port Adelaide might not be the powerhouse that Zak Butters was hoping that they would be, particularly going into this year. The second crucial element of this is that Zak Butters is one of a select few at Port Adelaide who has developed an extremely close bond to Ken Hinkley. Now, what we know is that at the very best case scenario, he's leaving at the end of the year. Damo, you're pretty adamant the fact that they will stick to that timeline and won't part ways with Ken Hinkley before that. It's not to say that he doesn't have a good relationship with Josh Carr, the incumbent, but that his relationship with Ken is really strong. And those 4 clubs that we're going to show you soon, who have plenty of draft capital between them, think that he might be on the chopping block as early as this year.
And that Port would engage more likely at the end of this season than they would be able to when he's out of contract the following year?
Yeah, that's right. And this is what it all comes down to, Lordo. Like, if Port don't have the year that they were hoping, and all of a sudden you're getting offered high-end draft picks, particularly by the likes of Richmond and Essendon, both who have 2 first-round picks in the upcoming draft. And you can see that here. So Essendon have their own and Melbourne's. Richmond have their own and North. They could both be 2 top 10 picks right now. Hawthorn have Carlton's first-round pick, which is what, at the moment, pick 3, I think. Collingwood may find it harder, but they will try to get into the draft.
Yeah, Port have to be really careful, I think, because they lost Dan Houston a year ago, and they'll lose Zak Butters, and then they're getting a new coach. They don't look the most attractive club for Josh Carr to try and get players over, unless they're Adelaide boys trying to go home. So it's something they have to be really careful of and be strong in keeping a player like that, trying to, because they've got to be really careful of the image it portrays.
Is this one of the challenges when you have a succession plan, or is it just too long a bow to draw to say, oh, well, you're moving on one coach and he's close with players X, Y, Z, so you might upset them?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's too long of a bow to draw. Look, I understand the relationship between Zak Butters and Ken Hinkley is incredibly close. Like, I think most people in the industry know that. But if you're Port Adelaide, you're not even entertaining the idea unless Zak Butters comes into your office and says, I have to leave for home, and then you're only doing it again if you're getting multiple picks, because you're only going to get one compensation pick if he goes through the restricted free agency. So it has to be multiple picks for you to even entertain it, because even if you are going through a rebuild, the ideal person you'd want in your team is Zak Butters.
But what about for 2 first-rounders? Do you drive him to the airport for 2 first-rounders?
No, you're not driving him to the airport, because the person you want to hold on to is the known quantity, which is a dual All-Australian at this vice captain, game winner. We've seen in the last couple of years, even on this show, we've talking about some of his games being the best games we've seen all season from an individual. So you want to hold on to him until he just absolutely says, no, I can no longer be playing at Port Adelaide, and then it's, can we do the best deal with multiple picks? Now, if it just goes to free agency, we're only getting the 1 pick on compensation.
He's a leader at the Port Adelaide Footy Club. The official co-captain of West Coast Eagles is another person in the news for trade reasons tonight. Out of contract at the end of the year. We know that clubs have been coming hard for him before this period. Now, This is just recent articles in recent times. Channel 10 in Perth tonight, Sam, reporting that Sam Mitchell is again over in that part of the country and again potentially trying to woo that player across their way, having done so successfully with Tom Barrass in the last trade period.
I just got off the phone with someone in Perth moments ago who said that Sam Mitchell and his wife Lyndall were by chance in Perth on a holiday because the Hawks had their bye, but just so happened that, we're in Perth, we might catch up with an out-of-contract player, whether you choose to believe that or not. But we've sat on this panel before and talked about how clever Sam Mitchell is, not just as a tactician, but with luring opposition players. And they're getting in early, Lordo, for Oscar Allen.
Yeah, and this is what you have to do, though. This is how early you have to get them to make a decision. Oscar Allen on the weekend, I'm a big fan, probably the biggest fan of him on this panel, and just how slow he's playing, Sam. So I think whichever club he's at, I think he needs to look at his speed, his agility. He's had a lot of injuries, so maybe that's affecting him. But if I was Oscar Allen, even though he's captain, he must be looking at other players and saying, how well do they go at Hawthorn? Like Massimo D'Ambrosio, Lloyd Meek, Carl Amon's career there.
Chol.
Chol, Joshy Battles, he was good at St Kilda. Barrass, he must look at that, Damon.
Yeah, and Brisbane's already made its pitch for him, so he's already got two clubs that are really, really keen on him. There are going to be others, but let's just focus on him for a moment. I mean, he's not at all performing near the levels that he could. Now, I know he's had injuries throughout his career. He missed half of last year with a serious one, but the performances this year, particularly that game in the Derby on the weekend, was nowhere near acceptable for him. Is this weighing on him, and does this club need to bring this to a head?
No, I think physically he doesn't quite look right. When you speak to people out in the West and were at that game, which I did afterwards, today, they said he didn't look fully fit. I know he's been banged up, so that does weigh on him. He's trying his best to get out there. We know West Coast needs their captain out there, not just for Harley Reid, but for the whole entire side. He looks like a guy who's out there because he knows his team needs me out there, but I don't think he's fully fit.
I know times have changed really quickly, but how would you have felt as captain as you were if you're out of contract in his scenario and meeting with an opposition coach literally a few hours after being done in a derby?
Yeah, there's no way I would do that. I'd be saying, mate, more than happy, meet with the management, but there's no way I can be doing that. I've just had hardly touched the footy. We've just been smashed in a derby. I'm the captain, so I personally wouldn't be doing that. I'm not saying he has, but if the stories are true, not a great look, and you'd be pretty sheepish walking into the club tomorrow morning with this news breaking when you're the captain of the footy club.
I don't think players care as much, even from our generation, Lloydie.
About what? About loyalty or about the optics of meeting?
The optics of meeting. I think that the market is so fluid. There's players who've moved in and out. As long as they front up, train hard, they're engaged while they're at training, I don't think they care as much as our generation do.
He'd be trying to get a meeting with Harley Reid too while he's there, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely... as we said off the top of the show...
It's the same stable as Oscar Allen.
They are actually different managers, I believe. But,
same stable, though?
No, I think it's a different stable. But as we said off the top of the show, Hawthorn are going to be in the market for all of these players. They've got so much money. They're going to have a look at Harley Reid. They're going to have a look at Zak Butters. And now we know that their coach is meeting with Oscar Allen. If you were a Hawthorn supporter at 4-0, you'd be a pretty happy man. A happy team at Hawthorn, as they say. A happy team at Carlton, they are not, unfortunately. And the question has to be asked, how would the incumbent chief executive, the chief executive in waiting in Graeme Wright, be feeling about the Michael Voss situation? We know he's been spending a little bit of time in the coach's box. He's just come from Collingwood. This is a reminder as to what Graeme Wright had to say when he appointed Craig McRae as Collingwood coach 3 weeks before Michael Voss was appointed as Carlton coach.
It was clear from our perspective that he was a unanimous choice to be our next senior coach. He understands the modern game, understands that it's always evolving, but is also a proven developer of young people. He's process-driven, he's calm, he makes calculated decisions, and as Mark also stated, he's a proven winner across whether he's been coaching or as a player.
So Graeme Wright, Sam, effectively treading water. That's him in the rooms there after the round 1 game. That was a shock loss to the Richmond Football Club after a 41-point lead. He's taking over from Brian Cook at the end of the season. We know he's an agent of change of sorts. That's what he did at Collingwood. He basically flushed out the whole Hawthorn succession plan when he approached Sam Mitchell before he then had to go and get Craig McRae to be involved in the Collingwood process. So he'd be looking at the club. I mean, he's clearly looking at the club. He was in the box, the coach's box on the weekend. It's not the first time he was in the coach's box. So he's having a look at all operations. And I'd imagine he's not going to be settling for what's unfolding at Carlton at the moment.
Is it okay for him to be in the box?
Yeah. he's going to be taking over. He's got to find out who's working well. It's going to eventually be his job. He does have the football experience. He's got no issue with it. But the guy who's the current CEO, Brian Cook, is not an agent of change.
You're big on this, aren't you? That he will let this settle.
When everyone's losing their head, Brian Cook is normally the stable person at the wheel. And you have a look wherever he's gone. At West Coast, everything was about stability. And then clearly his time at Geelong, he'd be thinking, it took 7 years before Bomber Thompson, struck gold with us at the Cats in 2007. We were down, we went up, and then we had that terrible year. He reviewed it. Let's stick with Bomber Thompson. I can imagine he's thinking to be, stick fat. It does take time. How many years did it take for Damien Hardwick? You can make little changes around the edges.
That's right, but I mean, the reality is that he's not going to be there come October.
No.
And the reason that we talked about Graeme Wright here is that he actually overlooked Michael Voss and chose another man in Craig McRae in the Collingwood situation. So I just wonder how that predisposition of Wright's opinion on Voss may play out, particularly when they're losing.
Yeah, and you wonder what feedback Michael Voss would have got from Collingwood, because you get feedback on why you missed out and things like that. But yeah, I've got no issues with him being in the box either. He's got to do what's best for his footy club. He'd be reviewing absolutely everything with what he's seeing. It's a massive game against the Magpies for Michael and the club on Thursday night.
It certainly is, and we've made the point on this show several times before that Michael Voss is under the pump. But he can't be blamed for absolutely everything that goes wrong at Carlton. This is him explaining why Tom de Koning 2 weeks ago couldn't get back on the ground at a key point.
Is that frustrating that one of your most influential players is stuck off though in crucial time?
Sometimes it happens. It happens all the time. It's not an unusual thing. So clearly we don't like him on the ground, but there's some times when the player's on the other side of the field and you can't make that happen. So as a side, what you've got to pride yourself on being adaptable, and you understand that there are spanners that get thrown at you all the time.
Well, this was the latest spanner on the weekend, wasn't it? Because Jack Silvani was having one of the games of his career. Lordo was playing really well and nullifying the influence of Aaron Naughton, as we can see here. And yet, again, a late stage in the game, 6 minutes on the clock, they're up by 4 points. He's on the bench when Aaron Naughton kicks a really important goal that you're about to see. So this is becoming a pattern.
Yeah. I think what you want is your best players for the last 5 minutes. So say like de Koning, for example, he can't ruck the whole time. I saw that was about 7 minutes and 40 seconds to go. So you've got to give them a break at some period, but you try and get them back on your best 4 players. You don't want them sitting on the bench for the last 5. So, yeah, I can understand where he was unlucky in that situation, but maybe not so the Silvani one, because I think when you've got a man beaten, there's nothing better as a forward when you see someone who's been toweling you up all day go running off to the bench for rotation. So that's where I reckon for key position players like defenders and forwards, I think you should keep them on the ground more.
Who cops it for that, Jimmy? Like, whose responsibility is that, the rotations?
Oh, they'd have someone in charge with the rotations.
Is it high performance? Is it assistant coaches?
It'd be different for each club. There'd be an assistant coach or a coach down there, as you said, a high performance person to be in charge of the rotations. But I'm with Lloydie. You're really good players. If you can get them a quick rotation early in the last quarter and say, play the final 18 minutes. You have a look at the key players of most teams. They tend to play the last 15 minutes anyway. Just grab anybody. If the game's on the line, it doesn't have to be like for like. You can almost see Michael Voss going, who are you coming on for? So they're still locked into who the rotations were. Just grab anyone.
There's a strange argument that lives in reality, I reckon, right now, that Carlton could be the worst team in the comp, and yet Tom de Koning could be the best player in the comp on 3 weeks of form. They just couldn't afford to lose him, could they?
No, and that's where I talk about if it's a financial thing. If it's all about money, is it about the direction of the club, or with Tom, is it all about money? If it's all about money, you can't be losing him. They'd be losing. I'd let Harry Mackay go every day of the week, and I know it's a sensitive one because of what Harry's going through, but I'm just in totality of their
You're talking in general terms.
Terms, and I'd throw in another. I'd nearly let Sam Walsh go, you know what I mean, before de Koning. You cannot replace de Konings, but you can replace other players. So there's no way, you don't want to sell the farm for any player, but you're going pretty close.
So just on that, given that de Koning's out of contract, so the interest is there and it's valid and he can move, whereas Mackay is contracted and going through what was discussed as personal issue was revealed by Michael Voss last week. So would you open up conversations with other clubs about Harry?
Yeah, if it meant that I was losing Tom, yes, I would look to see what player he can get out. And I know that's safe. I look at Sam Mitchell, and he was brutal in some decisions he made. And they were older players in terms of club legends to do what was best for his list. And if that's what it means to keep the best ruckman in the game, you just got to do it.
I think your point, in theory, is really sound. But unfortunately, I think Tom's going to make his decision in probably the next month.
Yeah, but
So it's hard to now sit down and convince Tom, hey, we'll pay you the money that you need, but you got to let us get rid of some other players first.
yeah, well, I'd be shocked if they, just over the next month said to him, we can't get to that number, Tom.
Well, they couldn't get to 1.7. If the number
their current deals.
If the number's being bandied around, if St Kilda are willing to offer him $1.7 million a year.
Well, that is a time that maybe you just have to let him go at that number, but you try and get pretty close.
Well, the Demons decided not to let any of their stars go in last year's trade period. They are chips in on this list, and we were reminded of that at the best and fairest night last year.
I know come round one next year, when I see the first ball bounce and our midfield of Gawn, Viney, Oliver and Petrarca our first clearance, that you Melbourne faithful will be there in full force.
And here's the contract status of those players he spoke of. They're all contracted long term. All of them aren't travelling that well at the moment. Yes, we are only early, but I felt when Brad was making that speech, they were in that much damage control as a football club. They couldn't afford, getting Christian to start the club, getting Clayton Oliver to start. They were just looking for that word stability within that football club. But now they get to a situation where they're still losing anyway, and they've locked away all their players. So they're in no better position by having kept them.
And Brad Green spoke about centre clearance, and that used to be their one word, centre clearance and defending the ball. They were a top 3 defence and also one of the best clearance sides. And 8 of the 9 losses they've had in recent time, they've lost clearance and lost them badly and been scored against really heavily. Consecutive weeks, 120 points against. So their one wood is disappearing for them. So they've got to find quickly a way to rejig the midfield mix. As we looked 2 weeks ago against North Melbourne when they started pummelling Melbourne, and it's starting at the initial clearance. All those names that you're talking about, there's Viney, Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver, but sides are just matching them with the physical brutality which Melbourne has been known for, but then they're running away, and that's the issue as well. Look at all these contests. The initial contest is just as strong as Melbourne, but the class and polish and the ability to take it away is really hurting them. So they're going to find a way either to rejig or do something different if they're going to run with that mix or change that mix up. So, because we're in the middle of the year, you can't just go get a heap of new players. So what else can you throw through there? Look at that. They're all left at the stoppage in all these, running away, powerful. I know that's a backup ruckman, but that's Flanders moving Viney out of the way there, and away they go. These all result in scores, which hurt them. They've gone from a top 3 defence, as I mentioned, to 7th. Now they're sitting currently at 15th.
And as we watch all this and witness what happened on the weekend in a disastrous fashion on field, their messaging has been mixed, and I think their actions have been very mixed as well. I mean, Brad Green himself was an interim chair and he was making list decisions. We learned after that particular performance at the best and fairest that he was ringing Clayton Oliver that day to say, you're staying, when he was being shopped around by the club and he was shopping himself around. And then they've embraced this love word and this embracing of the connection word. Last year it was culture, this year it's love.
Yeah, it was a bit weird when Cootie and Richo came to the board and presented this to us. We talked about love. This pre-season's been all about love, connection, the way we were connecting as players. You've got to love the game and love the people that you're playing with. If you don't have that, it's hard to win.
I do love this job. I do love this footy club. I love the people and I love everyone involved. I think the thing that gets you through your challenges in life is this word called love.
Yeah, I think both those boys use the word love. It's a pretty powerful word. It's not a word that is used a lot in football. It's a cool word to get behind. But yeah, in the end, we're going to be judged by how we play footy.
It started to emerge as fake love, and as we discuss that aspect of it, we just remind people this is the state of the club. There's no CEO in place at the moment. David Chippendale there is the interim CEO. He's vying for the main job, but hasn't got it. Stephen Smith is going to be, by Brad Green's own words himself, the next president, but is going to be overseas for a large part of the 2025 season. And obviously Simon Goodwin and Alan Richardson are still there as coach. But when they keep referring to the love aspect, Lordo, they've got a player in Petrarca who shopped himself around. We know that Oliver shopped himself around and the club itself shopped him around before that. You've got a CEO who's gone and not yet replaced, and the chairperson, Kate Roffey, had to stand down last year over her handling of certain issues and public commentary. Yeah,
I found it really interesting there, Brad Green. First I've heard the grab where he says that Goody and Richo came and presented it to us, and you can't fabricate it. You can't fabricate okay, we want to bring love as our term, and we're just going to try and generate that between getting it back at the football club. But it all comes from actions. Like, words mean nothing. And now, and particularly if you present it to a group of players and you got, say, a handful of them potentially sniggering or laughing or not buying into it, it just means nothing. And I know I've spoken to Richmond people around. They spoke about their vulnerabilities. You know, players got up and said, I haven't been this or I haven't been that. But you know what they did? They won their first 5 games and they had a game plan that they all believed in. They brought in a new assistant coaches who changed the whole thing, and they found a belief out of winning and doing things on the field. Melbourne refused to run on the weekend. Melbourne refused to chase. Melbourne refused to defend. So that is all garbage, absolute garbage, and stands for nothing when you're not actually... they're just talking. And Melbourne have talked and talked for a number of years.
They did it last year with the culture word.
Yeah,
I mean, Gary Pertz is the best culture he'd seen in 40 years.
Yeah, so there's been a lot of that which has stood for nothing.
Do you think that when they're saying things like that, like the love piece, are they trying to almost force themselves into thinking it? Like, we know that Ben Crowe has been doing a lot of work with him. This is the guy that, you know, helped Ash Barty turn around a career, did a lot of work with Richmond. I just, like, is it the self-talk? If we say it enough, Damo, maybe it will come true.
Look, I just think they were so desperate to draw a line on the disaster in so many ways of the previous, I'm going to say 2 years, 2023 and 2024. They went to the Wright camp. Again, they want us to know that. They want us to know they had the coming together, both before the official part of that camp started and even the days in the lead up to it. I think some of this is just on the run. We just need to draw a line on everything that's happened. We're starting afresh. But you can't forget what's happened. These are their 2 best players trying to get out of the joint.
Totally.
Right up to the deadline of trade.
Having said that, not trying to defend them at all, if they didn't do any of that, if they didn't try to change the narrative at all, and they were 0-3, we'd be sitting here and saying, oh, well, they're a club with their head in the sand, they refuse to acknowledge it, they refuse to try to change. So it's a little bit like what you said. If they'd done what Richmond did and started winning, well, then we'd be having a different conversation. But, Jimmy, this comment from Max Gawn, from Andrew Wu on the weekend was fascinating.
Yeah, the frustration. We know love can be frustrating as well, Sam. So there is a level of frustration with all the senior players. And we just picked some edits here. And you see Stephen May was clearly working his way back in the game, and he was under siege. And Ben King could have kicked 10 on him here. But Petrarca, he's arguing with the umpires. Johnny Noble, Fritsch has got his head down. That's a certain goal now. Him just running, that's like training drill sort of stuff because of the frustration, arguing with umpires, checking the big screen, have a look at that. So you can just see it boiling over, and you want the leaders just to stand there and just go, right, am I taking care of my own house here? Am I getting the job done? It just seems to be boiling over at the moment, and they just can't get anything going.
And on the other side of the equation, an amazing win for Damien Hardwick's side, who were actually finding that love was all around.
Yeah, but they've got a harder edge to them, the Gold Coast, and I think that's what we've been asking for. You mentioned Melbourne, where's the change? And Lloydie, for me, they talked the big talk. We had a year under Dimmer. We know his game style, and he's been pretty ruthless at the selection table and what he demands and what he wants.
And what's coming out of his mouth is proper what I want to hear as a footballer is we need to find an identity. Our identity, they've been... You can't trust them in the past, whereas they're trying to build an identity of trust. And yes, they've got to do more to it, but it's much better than talking about...
Those numbers, though, as good as they are, they've come against West Coast and Melbourne.
Yeah. And this is not the first time, the second time, the third time or the fourth time we've been sucked in early in the season by this footy club.
That is true. That is true. But
so you talk about actions. Let's see if they're continuing these actions.
It's been a good start. They couldn't have done any more.
They absolutely couldn't have done any more. A hot start on Footy Classified. As we go to the break tonight, the footy world is, of course, mourning the tragic passing of Andrew Krakouer. Our thoughts go to his entire family and friends and all who knew him. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders are advised that the following piece contains images of the deceased.
They need to get a goal here. They might go Andrew Krakouer.
Got it.
Just like his old man.
Krakouer deep in the pocket. What can he conjure? Magnificent.
Up towards 4 foot almost. Campbell. Krakouer in the pocket. Clever. He kicked a goal. Sensational play from Andrew Krakouer.
Got one yet. Gives it to Krakouer. The foot candy specialist. There's Krakouer. He's got it. Collingwood are back in front. Oh boy!
Ball still alive. Krakouer. 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 Krakouer.
This incident here. I'm not quite sure if it's necessary.
I don't know why he does it. I really don't know why he does it.
Do that. That's not necessary. It's just going to take a while to break it. It's in him. That's
Is he not
so
listening?
He's trying to listen, but competitive instinct. The eyes go into rage mode, and one or two things pop up that doesn't go his way. He can't help himself, so he's working on it.
Welcome back to Footy Classified. He's a hot topic, isn't he, each and every week, Harley Reid? And that was a fascinating insight from his coach, former coach, I should say, Adam Simpson.
It was. Sitting back watching at home, Sam, I've been intrigued by his behaviour the last few weeks, but nothing better than hearing the man who's coached him for the previous 12 months. And there's no doubt he's been the big fish in the small pond through junior football and then under-18 league, and now he's coming into the big man's world, and he's every moment is being watched. Everyone wants to keep saying it's too much, everyone's being too hard. But again, I said this last Monday night, he's got to adapt and he's got to change, otherwise he's going to wear very thin. He's already wearing thin on people. But I think that when you're 60 points down and the best man on the ground is just putting on a clinic and you go and deck him, I think, again, you could see his previous coach has had his challenges with him, and after 3 rounds, nothing has still changed with Harley Reid.
Can I ask you, is that just, is it hot-headedness, for lack of a better term? Is it immaturity? Is it a combination? Is it something that he'll grow out of? Or is that probably the Harley Reid we're going to see for the next 15 years?
He's 19 years of age.
Yep.
And Lloyd, he started to touch on it. He's used to being the biggest and the baddest on the block, and whenever you need the game to change, he can do it like that. But you're playing against seasoned veterans and some high-quality players as well, week in, week out. If it's still a problem when he's 23, we've got a different discussion.
What about the discussion surrounding the Dockers? What did you make of them and their leaders on the weekend in the Derby?
The handbrake started to come off, and we've been asking for the Dockers to play a bit more free-flowing at 106 points against West Coast, who's averaging 115 against. But you look at their leadership group, and Lloydie touched on Caleb Sarong, best man on the ground. It could have been Brayshaw as well, but they're pretty strong leaders. You can see it on field. They demand excellence. I know, Lloydie, your time in school football, Brayshaw just demands everyone comes with him, and it stands out. And I reckon we've seen highlights like this from Brayshaw, I reckon 100 times in the last couple of years, where it's the tackle, it's the surge, it's the want for the contest. And if you're playing with guys like this, I played with Joel Selwood, I played with Cameron Ling, great leaders who, they just do that consistently. It's not, I'm going to do it because it's a moment. It's just embedded the way they play. Is he going down that path, Caleb Sarong, like the Selwoods and the Lynx?
Oh, they were special. I think Joel Selwood was one of the best captains the game's ever seen, so it's a bit early for that. And he has spoken about being a bit introverted at times, which Joel wasn't the most overt player, but he made you all stand taller. So it's a bit of a way to go. But Andrew Brayshaw is the best young leader I've ever seen in my time in the game. So I think, and he's the vice captain. So they've got two pretty special players there.
You touched on a couple of your old teammates, your old coach, or one of them at least, in Chris Scott. Had a couple of concerns after the game against Brisbane that they just let slip away.
We think we've got some young guys who are going to come in and improve us quickly, which we'll need, because if we don't find a way to improve, the competition looks pretty ominous.
Yeah, the young players he's talking about, and that's when you run into a Brisbane Lions side who are pretty experienced and really confident. When you win a premiership, you just get this confidence that you can win from anywhere, and we've seen Brisbane do that in the last 18 months. They've given up big starts, but they have this belief. So what Chris Scott's talking about is, OK, Tom Stewart goes out, but who's the next one to come in? Who's going to fill that midfield void now Patrick Dangerfield is playing forward?
If you wanted to be glass half full, they were 32 points up against the reigning Premier before losing that game, and they were a similar margin up in the prelim final of last year. They were 47 points down in round 2 against St Kilda and nearly got back to win. So I know the win-loss is 1-2, but it could be 3-0.
Yeah, they're one of the more fascinating sides for me, what they do this year, because I don't think there's many good sides there in this season's competition.
As far as premiership contenders?
As far as premiership contenders. So you got Brisbane, you got Hawthorn, and then there's a bit of a drop.
Giants not there?
Giants, I think they're a bit off. And then you got Sydney, I don't know where they stand. The two sides that take each other on, Gold Coast and Adelaide, well, they haven't even been in the finals for years. So I think that they're Geelong are the ones that you hope can find another gear, because I think there's a lot of average to mediocre teams in this comp already.
You touched on old v young just a moment ago. Have we come full circle as an industry on older players?
Yeah, I think we have. As soon as a player got to the age of 30, people are trying to write them off as soon as they have a bad game. And we do, fascinate. We're in awe of young players. No wonder Dacos, Darcy, all these sort of guys. But if we look at the experienced guys, every team we just touch on is crying out for not only leadership, but still good form and that. Now, you almost call it the Tom Hawkins effect there with Dane Zorko, where you just keep getting better and better and you know your game. And the thing for me with Zorko, he hasn't lost any of his punch or power, and we know his energy. He loves the contest. He celebrates goals. He gets in face. But look at this kicking, the power in his kicking, the speed. So he's the one who can take the ones up the middle of the ground. So he's still as important as ever for the Lions. And in the last couple of weeks, he's kicked big clutch goals. Look at the celebration as well.
And when did it change, you think, where coaches were trying to phase out players at 30 to now trying to have them around?
Yeah, I think we've seen with the Cats winning a premiership and also, the recovery, the professionalism going into it. And this was a more difficult task than I thought, was I was trying to put together a side of over 30s. And some of the names that are missing from that side, so you can play this at home, but can you plug in May, Big Nankervis, Elliott, Crisp, Laird, Mason Wood, Howe, Ward, Broad, Lester, Witts, Lloyd, to name a few. I think I've got a pretty good side and I'm happy to sub someone out, but I think that side would go close to rolling most sides if you stacked it up week in, week out.
Stephen May didn't get a Guernsey in the Bartel 22.
I said you can swap them in and out, but I went with
Stephen May missed out.
We only came back this week, so McGovern, Collins and Tom Stewart were pretty good defenders.
Big fan of Footy Classified is Stephen May.
Oh, yeah, you can go in. Who are you taking out?
McGovern. I think.
Right. Big fan of the show, McGovern.
We're all big fans of the show. We're all big fans of the water cooler, which is up next. And we're touching on the leadership or potentially lack thereof at AFL HQ. Also, this year's Tassie fixture. And has it been engineered to make sure there is a roof on the new stadium? That's if the stadium does get built. And don't forget, Classified back tomorrow at a special new time, 8:40 tomorrow night with Eddie, Hurdy, Tom and Rory.
Lloydie, the AFL missed a trick in not setting the precedent to come down hard during pre-season.
Good call. I'm furious call. Actually, I don't get too fired up on matters like this too often, but I tweeted on the day saying he has to go, Ginby. I didn't like it. Players are doing this more and more, pushing the backs. It's gone out of the game. Umpires don't pay it. Players know that. And players are shoving opponents in as a way of pushing them under the footy, and we're just going to have players injured constantly. It's embarrassing. It's gone too far already, and they have to come out and suspend some players soon.
Well, I think they'll take every incident as it is, but when we had Samuel Lawler break his jaw. If it is a similar incident, it's pretty hard to change the rule during the seasons.
Welcome back. Matthew Lloyd doing what he does so well year after year, and that is setting the agenda with the important issues. And the water cooler talking point this week is something you talked about 5 weeks ago. You slammed the AFL for a lack of leadership then, and the chickens have come home to roost, haven't they?
Yeah, and that's where you understand that. And Adam Uze's frustrated because he loses a player to a broken jaw in Sam Lawler, and then 5 weeks later he has a player suspended for 3 weeks. So there's a lot of frustrated Tiger people out there going, how can this happen? And that's why at the time it just had to be clear. I feel it's hard when you say this. Understanding the game and understanding what players are trying to achieve. I knew full well what players are doing here and the danger of it. But then it takes too long for the AFL then to make a decision, and a strong decision, which they needed to do at the time, Damo, and suspend him.
It would have been so much cleaner. And we all said this at the time. When you actually tweeted for the first time in a year. That's how strong you were about it. And I don't mean that because you were worked up over it, and you could see it. It was February 17, Lordo, and we're now about to hit April, and we're now going into round 4, Sam, of the home and away season. If they did it in the off-season, it would have been clean to start the new season, the real competition, with this rule in place. Instead, they sent a memo out. Now, a memo is just words. It's not using their own rules as the device to stop the behaviour.
Can I clarify something? You just, I'm not sure that the phrase that you used, potentially there was a lack of understanding of the game and how players were playing. You reckon that at the AFL, a lack of understanding of the actual game itself?
Yeah, having the fortunate nature of playing in a role in the game where you're doing those things, and I've done that motion before, and I've been pushed in that motion before, and you know full well what players are up to and what they're doing, and that's why I thought it needed to be stamped out. And I was too slow to come around to the bump when the first player hit, and I said, why are they suspending players for that for? Then it was the tackle. It took me too long to get my head around that as well. But I thought I've been wrong and I've been too slow. We've got to protect the head and the brain more, and yet we have let this go for 5 weeks too long where more players are getting hurt when they need to be stamped out.
It's fascinating, Jimmy, because all of this is happening at the same time that the AFL are being criticised, and there's a level of frustration from many clubs about a potential lack of leadership within the footy department. And we know for a fact, it's been written about, you brought up Jay Clark's article in the Herald Sun last week about them looking for that 2IC or looking for another senior head in football. So people are coming for the leadership at the AFL.
Yeah, I think there's frustration, but I think all people want is the AFL just to stack itself. It's headquarters. You control the game. There's been vacancies there for some time, so just go fill it out. There's really good people there. Let's just fill it with the best people in the game, and it might be some really good administrators. It might be some lawyers. It might be some good ex-players or former CEOs. You can do whatever you want. The AFL is not short of $1, so fill it out with elite talent.
Moving on to the fixture, you spent a little bit of time taking your fine-tooth comb through this, and I think the conspiracy theorist in you has come across something.
Yeah, my football sporting conspiracy, if I can get it out, theorist. Yeah, so I'm not saying there is one, Sam, but it just makes some...
Go with it, Jimmy. Back yourself here. Just own this.
I'm just saying there's some interesting reading. Of course, the Giants played the Hawks under lights at Lonnie, and there was a
beautiful night in Launceston.
Yeah, you can't see the usual 2 cows in that left paddock down at that far end. I reckon they're fake because they never move every time you see a day game.
What are you getting at here, Jimmy?
Well, I couldn't see the cows, Lloydie, because we're playing a night game. And look at how many night games we've had in the last 5 years. And what seems to be the topic of discussion this week, Sam?
If there is a roof on the stadium?
Yeah, about the conditions down in Tassie. I'm not saying there is
So
one.
they're presenting Tassie in the worst possible way in order to get this stadium across the line. Is that what you're trying to say, Jim?
I'm just giving you the data there, Damo, and you make the conclusion that you want that when there's a big debate about stadium...
with a roof.
And conditions, that all of a sudden we've gone from 44-day, one twilight and only one night game over that period to... Well, hang on, we're playing at night every time now.
It was 25 degrees on Saturday.
It's beautiful. Tassie has beautiful weather. I don't have a problem with the weather. I reckon we should play in all climate.
When's the next night game in Tassie this year?
Yeah, there's
one in June, isn't there?
There's another couple coming.
June might be.
Like I said, I'm just putting the data
chilly
there.
It was chilly for the Giants as well, despite the fact that they looked good early.
Yeah, they're a good side, but they wouldn't want injuries. My belief is that often we get seduced by the top enders at the Giants, and they're wonderful players. They've had so many good players, and they've still got so many. But the bottom end at the Giants, to me, is not as good at times, which can hurt them. So if some of their better players are down, so these guys, Lockie Keefe's been a wonderful servant, but I don't think he'd get a game at Hawthorn. For example, Callum Ward, brilliant he's been, but I think he should be getting pushed out of this side by the end of the season. Stone and O'Halloran, they're solid footballers, and everyone, you could pick people, so I could pick those players at Hawthorn. And unfortunately for the Giants, they do get picked at a fair bit. Maybe you have to pay more, Jimmy, to keep those players in Sydney, and that can hurt as well.
Yeah, they're forever going to probably be in the market of you've got to draft, develop quickly.
Yeah.
So they need to draft and develop really well. So if they do lose players, they keep remaining with high picks. And then you've got to try and hold on to the ones you want to hold on to, like the Finn Callahan, Tom Greens of the world.
Should you bring back Kohler? Just make it a little bit easier to keep those guys?
People get chills when they hear that.
No one likes hearing the word Kohler. We move on to the Adelaide Crows. Are they real, Lotto?
Real as in making the finals real. So it's too early to say. But there is one team. There'll be a team, whether it's the Suns or the Crows, that will play top 4 football. There's always one.
A bolter.
And as I said, I'd have no surprise. I don't think they lack for anything. So the forward line, to have 4 tall forwards operating the way they are, and I include Curtin in that as 4, he's 197 centimetres. Adding Rankin, and obviously Dawson are playing unbelievable football, and then the backs are better than I thought. So I don't know what they're lacking. Saligo's in that as well.
I just think it's a hold at this stage. St Kilda, Essendon and North. I don't think they're going to figure high, those teams, when it comes to September. So Gold Coast this week, it'll be another step if they do get past them.
Let's have a listen to their coach, Matthew Nix, talking after their latest win.
We played some of our best footy in the first 2 rounds where, we weren't doing a lot wrong, especially with the ball in hand. Today was one where we didn't get it right. So there needed to be another way that we found it, and we did that.
I'm a believer, Sam, but I don't think you are, you?
Don't put words in my mouth. I haven't said that I'm not a believer. I'm interested in the next 4.
I'm a believer.
That's great.
What are you interested in?
I don't think many will beat the Suns away from home this year. Geelong's always a tough game, who have a good record at the Adelaide Oval. The Giants are a really good team, and Freo away are going to be tough to beat.
So what if they go 2-2? Will you
be great result?
Yeah.
If they go 0-4, then I think it's back to square one in our conversation.
And you think it's a chance they'll be 0-4?
I didn't say that. I'm interested into. What are you trying to pry out of me?
I just think that you're really putting the slows on them.
I'm not putting the slows on them. I'm just. I would like to wait and see a bigger sample space. You don't need to see a bigger sample space about the Barossa Valley, though. We know how good that place is, and Footy Classified is going to find out even more. Gather Round kicks off. Eddie Maguire, Rory Sloane, the Sunday Footy Show's own Nathan Brown, James Hurd, a lineup of the biggest names in footy. Special guests on the panel live that night, Taylor Walker and Ollie Wines. Peter Malinauskas, the SA Premier. Doesn't the Premier love getting involved at times like this? And why shouldn't he? Gather Round. And the third iteration is going to be absolutely sensational. More Footy Classified right after this.
For a wonderful player, Jason Horne-Francis walks way too much. So after his first effort, he's got to do more than that. So here he is. It's a centre bounce. He's up against Jai Caldwell. So here's the two of them. They go up. His first effort is as good as anyone's in the competition. He's explosive. Kicked an unbelievable goal at the start of the last quarter. So once the ball moves, Caldwell's away. And look at Jason. Jason just walks. Doesn't keep moving, and it's a real concern for him that he wants to go to the next level. He's got to be better than that. When you hand over to a player, you've got to see it through. So here's Jace Burgoyne and Alir, and Jace Burgoyne says, I'll take him for you, which is fine. But then you've got to see it through for your teammates. So you've got to not let Alir down here. So you have to be much stronger than that and make a much better effort than this next one. Voss has kicked 9 goals, 17 in his career. He's got an issue with his technique. So you see, you've got to keep the ball over your leg. So for me, a left footer there. He's out to the side and he kicks it exactly where the ball has gone out to. So he's got to get it in tighter over his right leg there. He's struggling a little bit. I can't believe how many fundamentals are being missed. So basic handballs in this game, they just have to be hit. It's like a soccer player in the Premier League. You wouldn't see them miss the basic fundamentals of the game that these players are missing. So it's happened time and time again. This one I thought I'd finish with because this is what happened in the game. A big goal at a massive time in the game, which cost Port Adelaide power. The Adelaide Crows, this is why I love them. What a handball from Rankin. Then this handball from Sid Draper, the next one. And then Peatling, what a game he played. Over the top, out the back. They kick more goals out the back from the top of the goal square than any other side because of how clean they are. Luke Jackson, I think he's capable of more. I think he could be the best ruck in the game at some stage. He should be. That was him in the centre of the ground. If he can get this work rate up more, what a player he's going to be. So there he was in the centre of the ground. This is Williams who couldn't go with him. Here's Luke Jackson comes. Start flying for his marks more. This is what had the whole football world talking about him. That's why he was so good. He can do that a lot more. And this is the best kick-in I've seen. 3 disposals. I'm not sure we'll ever see that beaten. So it was 1 kick from the kick-in. Frederick, straight over the top. So the handbrake did come off, Jimmy, and one of the best kicking goals, but might say a lot about the West Coast Eagles as well.
It's just getting better and better is the Sledgehammer and the best iteration of it there. In fact, the Sledgehammer is getting so big, Jimmy, that not only is he welcoming back from the ad, but we've got no more time to talk about anything else. The Sledgehammer is now 1 full segment.
I love his handball. It frustrates me. Players don't value the handball as much as the kick.
But, well, you never missed a handball.
No, I missed plenty.
And Lordy never handballed. So,
because he's knocking over goals. When you kick 900, you don't need a handball.
At 926, don't sell the man short. Good call, bad call on Footy Classified is up next. Welcome back to Footy Classified. Time for everyone's favourite segment, Good Call, Bad Call, and Jimmy Bartell once again with the new ball. Jimmy, Matthew Lloyd can expect a call from the Crows this week. Good call, bad call?
Let's take a look at the vision first before I make my call, Sam. All right, here we go. Phil Thorpe there. Oh, the nice big in-swinger. What's wrong with that one? And Ben Keys.
Floater.
Oh, as long as it didn't hit the post, because that brings back nightmares for Crows. But yes, you should get Matthew Lloyd. Good call. down and teach goalkeeping.
Everyone should
He
get
just
auto.
gave us a lesson before. Were you listening?
I was trying to.
Inside the leg.
Sorry, I was
With
trying
Patrick Voss. Hey, Sam, this one's to you. In this modern world of fake news, it's more important than ever to check your sources. Good call, bad call?
Look, it's a good call, Damo. It's a slightly cheeky call, but I think ultimately an accurate call. And you're talking about Jonathan Horn from The Guardian on the weekend, who found himself in a little bit of hot water because he ended up posting about something that wasn't actually right. And you can see that bottom right corner. Sorry, John, the article you referenced about the top about sandwiches was a parody one I made up last year on the back of all back pages. Got to check your sources. Good call, Damo.
Damo, hell hath no fury, like a BT scorn. Good call, bad call.
It's a good call, but let's retrace what you're talking about, Lotto.
Good to be here in person at the Adelaide Oval. The only broadcasters that are actually at the ground.
So BT locked out of the Foxtel ad, but he's not locked out of matches of footy.
Very
I like
good.
it. If you target BT, you're going to cop it back.
Very good.
Hey, Lloydie pushing players into the marking contest, which you highlighted, but that's not the only scourge on the game at the moment. Good call, bad call?
Good call by you, Jimmy, and one I maybe shouldn't have been doing because I was as bad as anyone in my days at doing some of these things, but there was 4 stages in the space of one piece of play. So the North player went down, and then we'll see another one go down there. That's 3. And then when it's a 50-metre, he's looking for another one. So it's a lot happened, and I'm not sure we're seeing too many fines for staging.
Like it, Lordo. Jimmy, it's time for the league to pull back on the short kick crackdown. Good call, bad call.
Let's have a look at some examples first, Sam.
Got everyone covered, so he's just going to be patient.
15, play on.
Hang on.
That's a lot less to be paid.
That's a bad call. He called it before he even left his boot.
Rule of the week a few weeks ago.
25
I think it's rule of the first month. It might fizzle out.
Hey, Sam, back to you. Ross Lyon is still one of the game's most influential figures. Good call, bad call?
Great call from you. Not a good call, a visionary call. In fact, I think more than just a coach. He's now officially an influencer. So this is last week in the rooms. A little kiss there. OK, Ross maybe starting a bit of a trend. And then suddenly the Giants. Watch again, Himmelberg and Cornelio, a little kiss on the cheek. I think Ross has started something. More kissy-kissy.
Damo, Jake Stringer's skinfold clause flies in the face of the AFL's efforts to protect players. Good call, bad call.
It's a good call, Otto. It's a call of hypocrisy in the entire industry call because you're not allowed to publish in the official Bible, the AFL record book that goes out to all media and public, any weights, but it's OK for the GWS team to put such clauses into, and maybe people might say rightly so, Jake Stringer's new contract.
Now, Lloydie, ex-players need to know when to step out of the limelight. Good call, bad call?
That's a good call. Another good one by you, Jimmy. Here is Hamish Brayshaw, who's, I don't know why they sit inside the fence, these boundary riders that's in Perth, but here he is on the field and he's talking about it when Cripps was having a shot for goal.
Yeah, still dazed and confused after that. I've copped an arse in the face and I don't know what's going on. But all I knew is I looked up and the ball was sailing through the middle. It's been a monster day for me. 9-minute mark, arse in the face. Couldn't ask for much more.
Thoughts on that? Should he be over the fence?
I'm not sure Cripps had to give him one.
Ex-teammates, so he's on the list of the Eagles.
You would have done worse than that if someone had got in the way from your kicking.
Yeah, every snag's so important, Sam. So.
All 926 of them?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I might get it right. He always reminds you when he doesn't get it right.
Still top 10 forever.
Number 8 still, aren't you? Amazing. And 12-time leading Essendon goal kicker. But this isn't about Lordo. The closer cook is, it's next.
My cook tonight is for the Adelaide Crows ruckman Riley O'Brien. He was meant to fly the flag for Isaac Rankin. Let's take a look at the incident. So he was meant to fly the flag for Isaac Rankin. He came charging in at Sherry. Look at this. Hits the deck, then thinks, oh, wow, this bloke maybe is a bit too big. He goes charging off. Out of there as quick. And it took us back to our favourite one of all time. That is Cale Morton. No, we need to see it again. Here's Cale Morton. So him and Brendan Lade get into a bit of a scuffle. And I've never seen it. And he tries to deny it and say he was
making position.
Making position. But Riley O'Brien will be in that same category as Morton now.
How has Cale Morton come to try by from you for all of that?
In the handball, and he's still trying to. Well,
I think he was just looking for a kick, surely.
Yeah.
And maybe running away.
Didn't look great.
Maybe running away. Hey, tomorrow night, Footy Classified, Eddie and the full panel, including Hurdy, Rory and Tom Morris, are back. The special time, live at 8:40, right here on Channel 9. Thank you for joining us on Footy Classified. Whether it's tonight, tomorrow night, the Sunday Footy Show, Footy Furnace, we have you covered right here on Nine's Wide World of Sports. Good night.